Today we'll discuss about the analysis, how we can find the structure, the molecular mass, as well as the type of the bond present in the organic compound, as well as the mechanism in AS chemistry. So first one, analysis, we can analyze the molecule by using a mass spectrometer. Basically, what are the steps in a mass spectrometer? What we do in a mass spectrometer, first we vaporize the sample. The reason why we vaporize the sample, so that it can flow. So vaporization of the sample is there, the first step. After vaporizing the sample is now converted into a gaseous state. We ionize the sample. The reason to ionize the sample, so that the molecule, there's a net charge on the molecule and we can use electric field to accelerate. Otherwise, if it was not ionized, if there is no charge on the molecule or the atom, then it cannot be accelerated by electric field. And how we carry out the ionization? So for ionization, we have a molecule and we target this molecule by a fast moving electron. So when we target this molecule by a fast moving electron, this will remove the electron out. So as a result, if we write the equation for this, like we have a molecule, we target with the electron, then it will remove the electron, so it will form a positive ion or cation, and it can be multiple emission, like maybe 2 or 3 electrons might be released from the molecule, but we are considering the simplest uh, molecule in which only one electron is knocked out from the electron which we use to target the molecule. As a result, it will release 2 electrons, the one which we use and the one which is released. Now this is a positive ion, so now it is charged. So as it's charged, so we can use the electric field to accelerate. So when we use electric field, the molecule will accelerate. Then we use magnetic field to deflect. So first finger represent magnetic field, second represent direction. So if magnetic field is cross, it will go up, and if it is dot, it will go down. And the deflection in a magnetic field depends on the mass to charge ratio. Smaller mass to charge ratio means greater deviation or deflection. So the molecule will deflect and will receive a peak. The last step is a detection. So on a detection, we have on x-axis we have mass to charge ratio. On y-axis we have relative abundance or percentage abundance. So we will get a peak. The highest value of mass to charge ratio, that is called a molecular ion peak. Means it means that we detect the whole molecule. But practically, when we carry out for a molecule, when we carry out use this mass spectrometer, it does not give one peak; it gives multiple peaks. What could be a reason to have a multiple peaks? Because this is a molecule, so molecule might break into different fractions, different fragment, and that will result in these peaks. So example, if you have a molecule, the one which is have you have the highest mass to charge ratio, that's called molecular ion peak, and the one which is having the highest percentage, that is called a base peak. Base peak means most of the molecule break into this fragment. So example, say in the beginning we have butane. So when we have butane, but means 4 carbon, and the general formula of alkane CnH2n plus 2. So number of the hydrogen will be twice plus 2. So this will be C3, this is CH2, CH2 and then CH3. When we find the molecular relative molecular mass, 4 carbons, so 4 multiplied by 12, that's equal to 48, and plus there are 10 hydrogen atoms, so that will be 58. So molecular mass of this, the relative molecular mass is 58. So in a mass spectrometer, what we will get a peak at 58. So the peak at 58 shows the molecular ion peak. But what about the fragments? Because what happens, this molecule might break into further smaller component. So how we can work out number of component in which it will break? So the simple way, first you will break the molecule from left to right, and then you will break from right to left. So if I break from left to right, like what is the possibility? Maybe CH3 as a cation and other CH2, CH2 and CH3 as a radical. Radicals cannot be detected because radicals cannot be accelerated. There is no net charge on the radical. Net charge is zero. That's why radical cannot be accelerated by electric field. So you cannot detect the radical in the spectrum. So you only obtain the ions. So maybe it will break into CH3 and other fragment radical. So only you will detect CH3. So if you detect CH3, what you will get? You will get another peak. And what will be that peak at? This one will be peak at 15. So there is a peak at 15. What does it mean? The peak at 15 means that is because of CH3 with a plus charge. And this was CH3, CH2, CH2. These are possibilities. So you might detect a complete molecule. That's why it was 58. Or you might detect CH3 only. Then if it is CH3, as we are breaking from left to right, the possible fragment, so it might be CH3, CH2. That will be positive, and the rest CH2 and CH3 will be a radical. So where you will get a peak, because 2 carbon, 12 multiplied by 2, 24, and plus 5, that will be 29. So you will get another peak at 29. Then it might break into CH3, CH2, CH2, the cation, and then CH3 radical. Radical cannot be detected, so you will detect this part only. So this was 15 plus 14, 29, and 29 plus 14, that's 43. So you will get another peak at 43. So there will be another peak at 43. And the one which is having the highest mass to charge ratio value, that is the molecular ion peak. And the one which is having the highest percentage abundance, that is known as the base peak. Base peak means most of the fractions break down into most of the molecule break down into this fraction. So this is, we break from left to right, but because it is a symmetrical molecule, so if I break from right to left, what are the fragments? Like I will get at CH3 positive will be there, or CH3, CH2, and CH2 radical. So, but this CH3 is 15, so I will get a peak at 15. Or, so that does not make difference because this molecule is a symmetrical. So even I break from left to right or right to left, it does not make difference to the peak which we obtain. So we'll get these fractions. Is it clear? The mass spectrometer for molecules, organic compounds. Is it clear? Any doubt in this part? Same way, for example, if you have two molecules which have the same molecular formula but they have different structure, how you can distinguish, like what will be the difference in the fragment? Example, you have propanol and propanol. So if you have propanol, prop is 3 carbon, so this will be CH3, CH2, CHO, means C double bonded with O. If I show in terms of bonds, the last part means it is C double bonded with O and H. For propanol, I will draw CH3, C double bonded with O and CH3. When I find the molecular mass, there are 3 carbons, so 12 multiplied by 336, plus 6 hydrogens, so 42, and plus 16, so that will make 58. So relative molecular mass will be 58, and when you count for this one, relative molecular mass will be 58. So both have the same relative molecular mass. So in a mass spectrometer, how we can distinguish whether it is propanol or whether it is propanone? So you will break down this into fragment, first from left to right and then right to left. So first, if I break from left to right, if I break, so first it might be CH3, means I'll get a peak at 15. Then I might get CH3, CH2, so I'll get a peak at 29. Then I'm the third, we will get all together CH3, CH2, CHO, the whole molecule, so we'll get 58. From left to right, 3 peaks. Then from right to left, if it is CHO, this all, so carbon 12 plus oxygen 16 and plus 1, so that will be 29. Or it will be CH2, CHO, so this is 29 and plus 14, so 29 plus 14, so we'll get a peak at 43, and then whole molecule together. So we'll get a peak which is CH3, CH2, CHO. So this was 43 and we'll get it 58. So the peaks which we are getting a peak at 15. Common one we write once, we are getting a peak at 29. We are getting a peak at 43 and we are getting a peak at 58. There will be, like in a complex structure in molecules, there might be more peaks, but these are the peaks which can be used to distinguish the molecule. And when you check for propanol, first from left to right, so you will get a peak at 15. Then CH3, CO, so that is 12 plus 16, that is 28, and 28 plus 15, that's 43. Or you might have CH3, CO, CH3, uh, the molecule. So you'll get a peak at 58. Breaking from right to left, you will get a peak at CH3, which is 15. You will get a peak at CO, CH3, that is 43. and you can get a peak for the whole molecule CH3, CO, CH3, the whole molecule, which is 58. So the peaks which we are getting at 15, we are getting at 43, we are getting at 58. So which peak can be used to distinguish whether it is a propanol, because we are getting at 15, so 15 is common for both. So 15 cannot be used. 43 is common as well, so 43 cannot be used. 58 is common for both. So the peak which can be used to distinguish whether it is propanol or propanone, that is 29, which is due to CH3CH2. Is it clear? So two molecules may have the same molecular formula or molecular mass, but they will have different fragments in a mass spectrometer. Is it clear? So using a mass spectrometer, we can work out the fragments, the possible fragments, and the number of the peaks. This is the same example I already discussed with you, like how we can distinguish. So it is not possible for propanol to have a peak at 29. So that can be used to distinguish the which compound is there. Two compounds may have same molecular formula, but they have different structures. The second technique, the spectrometry, that is infrared spectroscopy. Infrared spectroscopy can be used to identify the type of the bond. Normally, when the bonds are polar, they tend to absorb infrared radiation, and on x-axis we have a wave number, and it is in decreasing order, like you'll find 4,000, 3,000, 2,000, 1,500, 1,000, and 500. Wave number means number of wave per centimeter, that's called a wave number. So using this wave number, we can identify the type of the bonds, because different bonds have different capability to absorb infrared radiation, different wave numbers. The part which is below 1500, that's called a fingerprint region. That's why we call that as a fingerprint region, because every molecule having its own infrared spectrum below 1500. So normally we use this infrared spectroscopy to identify the type of the bond, and using the type of bond we can work out the functional group. How we can use this? You don't have to memorize these numbers. As you can see, the numbers are given, the wave numbers are given. If there is a CO bond, absorption is from 1000 to 1300. C double bonded with O, 1400 and 1640 to 1750. These numbers you don't have to memorize, that this will be there in exam. You just have to identify, either the mass spectrum will be, the infrared spectrum will be there, and you have to identify which bond is present, or sometime they give you the structure and the range for wave number, and you have to identify what are the peaks, at which position you will get the peaks. And this is a basically what happened. Look, if you have a, say, a sample, like in the beginning you don't have sample, and you pass the infrared radiation, so as there is no sample present and we pass the infrared radiation, so all the 100 infrared radiation will pass through. So percentage transmittance on y-axis, we have transmittance, so percentage transmittance will be 100%, like 100% light passes through the sample. But when you place the sample, depends on what is the bond, which range the bonds absorb infrared. So because of that, you will have the peaks at different wave numbers. Some will be broad peaks, some will be sharp peaks, some will be thin peaks. So depending on the range. So example, As you can see, we have a compound which is butanol. So butanol, which bond it is having? It is having C double bonded with O. And sorry, it is butanol, not butanol. It is butanol C double bonded with O. So if it is C double bonded with O, when we check for C double bonded with O, it's from 1640 to 1750. So you can see the peak absorption is from 1640 to 1750. The other ranges are there, that is because of CH bonds and CC bonds, but this one is the one which is used to distinguish or identify the type of the bond present in the structure. Like if you have a compound, say ethanoic acid C double bonded with O and OH. So if you have ethanoic acid, so it will absorb, there will be C double bonded with O, absorption will be there will be CO absorption will be there, and there will be OH absorption. When you check the wave numbers for carboxylic acid, if there's a carboxylic acid 2000, if carboxylic OH is there, so 2500 to 3300, that will be one of the peak. Then C double bonded with O is there, and then O and H is there. This OH we already worked out, and then CO is there. So when you check the spectrum, there's an absorption of CO peak 1640 to 1750, and OH peak is there, which is also a broad peak. You can see this region, which is from 2500 to 2300. And keep one thing in mind, this order, it started with 4000, then 3000, then 2000, and this region 1500 is known as a fingerprint region. So using a range of the wave number, you should be able to identify the type of the bond, and using the type of the bond, you should be able to predict the functional group present in the organic compound. So molecules which changes their polarity and vibrate, they absorb infrared radiation, but molecules such as H2, O2 and N2, they cannot change their polarity as they vibrate, so they can absorb but do not register any infrared spectrum. And H2O, CO2, CH4, NO molecule absorb infrared and are greenhouse gases, where N2 and O2 are not greenhouse gases. Greenhouse gases mean they absorb infrared radiation, or when they re-radiate, they radiate longer wavelengths which cannot escape the atmosphere. So absorption of infrared radiation by bonds, and in this type spectroscopy, is the same absorption that the bond of CO and methane and water vapors in the atmosphere that cause them to be a greenhouse. So to be a greenhouse gas, it should have a polar bond, or the nature of the bond should, like the molecule should vibrate or the bond should vibrate, which changes the polarity, result in absorption and emission of infrared radiation. Is it clear, the infrared spectroscopy? Then the mechanism in AS, like this includes both unit 1 and unit 2. As we are concluding the unit 2, so this is just a quick revision. The AS mechanism, like if you have alkene, if you catalyze using a high pressure, you can polymerize, so it will form polyalkene. Like if ethene is there, polyethene, butene is there, polybutene. If you react with chlorine, halogens such as chlorine or bromine, the reaction is called electrophilic addition reaction, and that will form dihalogen alkane like 1,2-dibromoalkane, 1,2-dichloroalkane. If you use potassium manganate, then oxidation will occur, and what it result, it will form a diode. If you react with hydrogen, that's called addition of hydrogen. We use nickel as a catalyst, that's also addition reaction, or it can be categorized as reduction. Addition of hydrogen can be termed as reduction as well, so it will become alkane. And if you use hydrogen bromide or hydrogen chloride, that will be electrophilic addition, it will form halogen alkane. Alkane undergo a substitution reaction with bromine and chlorine in the presence of ultraviolet light. We call that a free radical substitution reaction. Halogen alkane, in the presence of alcoholic potassium hydroxide, it will form alkene. That's called elimination reaction. Halogen alkane in alcoholic react with alcoholic ammonia to form amines. And halogen alkane, if we react with PCl5 or PBr3 or phosphorus triiodide and heat under reflux, it's a substitution reaction. It will produce alcohol. Sorry, halogen alkane, if we use aqueous potassium hydroxide, then it will produce alcohol. But alcohol is there if we react with PCl5, PBr3 or phosphorus triiodide, it will form halogen alkane. And then alcohols, if we partially oxidize, it will form aldehyde, and aldehyde will oxidize to carboxylic acid. If alcohol is a secondary alcohol, it will form ketone. If primary alcohol, it will partially oxidize to aldehyde and then completely oxidize to carboxylic acid. So this is the journal. These are the general mechanisms for AS chemistry, including Unit 1 and Unit 2. So it is important that you learn this flow chart, like how one reagent can be changed to another, and the type of the reaction as well as the reagent which we are using. The bond breaking can be homolytic or it can be heterolytic. Homolytic means it produces a free radical, and heterolytic means it will produce the ions. The mechanism, basically in a mechanism, what we do to understand the reaction fully, what we use how the reaction proceeds step by step, and we call that as a mechanism. We use a curly arrows in the mechanism to show the movement of electron pair and showing either breaking or formation of a covalent bond. Like here you can see it's a halogen alkane. Halogen alkane is more reactive, so this electron pair is shifted towards halogen alkane, and the lone pair on hydroxide ion is attracted towards the carbon and trying to form a bond. A curly arrow will always start from a lone pair of electron or a center of the bond. Now these are certain terms which you should learn. Addition reaction means when two or more molecules join to form only one product. Substitution means when atoms or group of atoms replaces the other atom or group of atoms. Electrophile means which accept electron pair acceptor. Nucleophile means they will electron pair donors or attracted towards the positive center. Free radical is a reactive species which is having unpaired electron. Then electrophilic addition reaction in alkenes. So in alkene, the mechanism for electrophilic addition reaction like alkene plus bromine or alkene plus chlorine. First, what happened? Because of this double bond, even though bromine, if when we have bromine which is Br2, equal electronegativity, so there is no partial positive or negative, but once it is colliding with a molecule of alkene, this electron rich side repel this bond, a single bond between the two bromine atoms, and due to this repulsion is caused a shifting of the electron pair. One side electrons are more so partial negative and other side less so partial positive, and this electron which are involved in the bonding, the pi electron attracted toward the partial positive, and this bromine will take both electrons. When it will break the bond, So when the bond will break, one side bromine is added and it will form a carbon cation, and the other one, the Br, which is having a lone pair, attract and it will form 1,2-dibromo ethane, because the original reactant was ethene. If we have a symmetrical, like as you can see, this is a symmetrical, that's why both possibilities are there. But if it is asymmetrical, then the carbon cation, as you can see, this is a carbon cation. This carbon cation, when this will form a carbon cation, it is surrounded by one alkyl group. And other way around, if the second way, if it happen, then this carbon cation also having one alkyl group, so both have the same stability. But if it is asymmetrical alkene, the carbon cation which is surrounded by more alkyl groups, it is more stable. So if it is reacting with hydrogen bromide like HBr, bromine is more electronegative, so it will take both of the electrons which are involved in the bonding, and hydrogen partial positive attracted towards the electron rich side and form a bond. Now it is having two possibilities: either this will have a positive charge, the left hand side, or the right hand side. If the left hand side, the second carbon is having a positive, so it is surrounded by two alkyl groups. And if the first one is having, then it is only surrounded by one alkyl chain. So carbon cation, which is surrounded by more alkyl group, it is more stable. That's why the major product will be 2-bromo butane as compared to the minor product, which is 1-bromo butane. So carbon cation intermediate, why they are more stable when they are surrounded by alkyl group? Because alkyl groups are known as electron releasing group. They don't have tendency to accept the electron too much, so they are called electron releasing groups. So as they release their electron or try to release their electron, so the positive charge on the carbon cation decreases, so it will make it more stable. So carbon cation which have tertiary are more stable than secondary, and secondary are more stable than primary. Then nucleophilic substitution reaction, which is classified as SN, and it can be SN1 or SN2 depending on the type of the reagent. If you have halogen alkane, carbon is partial positive, so attacking nucleophile which is having a lone pair, attack on the carbon. The bond breaking and bond forming may take place at the same time, or maybe the bond first will break and then the bond form. It depends on the type of the structure of the compound. If it is primary, then the bond breaking and bond forming will take place at the same time. As you can see, like this is a primary halogen alkane. OH is having a space, so bond breaking and bond forming is taking place at the same time. And the transition state is having a negative charge because of extra electron. And then the bromine will break the bond and OH will form a bond. Now it will be a neutral compound. If we have a tertiary halogen alkane, OH does not find a nucleophile, does not find a space to attack. So first the bond will break, it will form a carbon cation with a positive charge, and then the lone pair of OH attracted towards this carbon cation and form a bond. This reaction is SN2. Why SN2? Because the reaction depends on two molecules, rate, the speed. This is SN1 because the reaction depends on only one molecule. As you can see, the reaction of ammonia with bromine, again the substitution reaction dissolve in alcohol. Bromine will break the bond, ammonia will form a bond, and this might have a multiple substitution as well. Possibilities are there. The further substitution reaction can occur between halogen alkane and amine, leading to a lower product of amine. So for making sure that there is no multiple substitution, for this purpose we use excess of ammonia, which helps to minimize the multiple substitution. Then the free radical substitution reaction, what happened This is a substitution reaction occur in halogen alkanes when alkane react with not halogen alkane when alkane react with bromine or chlorine. Due to ultraviolet light, first the homolytic bond breaking, chlorine molecule will break into chlorine free radicals, and these radicals, that's the first step, formation of a radical initiation step. Then propagation would happen, chlorine radical form a bond, so it will form, it take a HCl plus methyl radical. Methyl radical attack on another chlorine molecule from methyl chloride and chlorine radical. So this is called a propagation. As you can see, a chlorine radical again it is produced, so it can multiply. It's a chain reaction. The termination, how this reaction stop? Basically, when the reactants, when the radicals, free radicals are used up or free radical form a molecule, the reaction will stop. So methyl radical react with chlorine radical form methyl chloride, methyl radical and methyl radical to form ethane, and chlorine radical to form chlorine. This is evidence that this is a free radical substitution reaction, because there is nothing, ethane was not even the part, ethane was not in the reactant or the product, but it this give ethane, so which confirms that this reaction is a free radical substitution reaction. Same way we can apply this to with bromine or further substitution with chlorine. The ozone layer, which is O3, basically there is oxygen oxygen double bond, and then there is one dative bond. As you know, there is a double bond between them, and there is a lone pair. Oxygen belongs to group 6, so it will share 2. So one of the oxygen form a dative bond. So that is the structure of O3. How the ozone is formed, formation of ozone, what happened due to ultraviolet light, the oxygen molecule break down into oxygen atoms, free radical. And these free radicals combine with oxygen molecule to form ozone. So this is how ozone is formed. This is a formation of the ozone. And what is the depletion of ozone? How the ozone break down? When the ozone molecule absorb ultraviolet light, it will form oxygen and oxygen molecule and oxygen radical. So ozone is formed also and ozone is deplete also, but the rate of formation and depletion naturally is same. That is how it is protecting us from ultraviolet radiation. But due to human activities, the ozone depleters, as we are using certain compounds which are ozone depleter, they increases the rate of depletion of ozone rather than formation. That's why the thickness of the ozone layer will eventually decrease. As you can see, there are different compounds such as chlorofluorocarbons, CFCs. Due to ultraviolet light, the CFC break into chlorine radical, and this chlorine radical react with ozone. It will form a chlorate ion and oxygen molecule, and this chlorate ion react with another oxygen radical to form oxygen molecule and chlorine. So when we write the overall equation, you can see ozone molecule plus radical, chlorine is acting like a catalyst here, before and after it is there. So overall equation, ozone molecule due to oxygen radical form oxygen gas. And same thing, oxides of nitrogen which are released from the car engine, car exhaust, they also react, from oxide of nitrogen NO2 plus O2, and NO2 plus oxygen radical from O2 plus NO. When we write the overall equation, like these two will cancel out, so overall equation, again the same overall equation. So actually these oxides of nitrogen or chlorofluorocarbons, they are depleting the ozone by converting ozone molecule into oxygen gas. So CFC still is a concern, because CFC are still entering the atmosphere, and some of the countries are still using as a refrigerant. because it is inert. That's why they're using CFCs have a long lifetime, so it takes longer time to reach. The CFCs have a long lifetime in atmosphere, and it takes long time for CFC to reach upper atmosphere. So in that, we use hydrofluorocarbons, HCFCs, and they are much safer as they do not contain carbon and chlorine, because carbon and chlorine bond in CFC is responsible for uh, production of this chlorine radical. Here in HCFCs, there is no carbon and chlorine bond. That's why it is not a ozone depleter. Is it clear, this topic? So main topic was mass spectrometer, and the main topic